What if one simple move involving two key notes on the fretboard could change the way you play guitar forever? Hearing hard rockers like Slash and Angus Young use this move in their solos back in the day instantly changed the way I solo when I play rock and blues. And it's a key element in the styles of great country players also. So in this video, I'm going to show you this simple move. I'm going to explain why it sounds so darn good. And I'm going to give you a bunch of examples of how to use it to up the cool factor in your playing exponentially and get you playing killer bluesy rock licks like Slash and Angus. Grab your guitar, let's dive in. So unless you've been living under a rock for the last few decades, you've probably heard Angus Young play licks that sound like this. So what is this move I'm talking about? It's shifting between major and minor tonalities when you're playing solos over a major or dominant chord. In that short example I played, he actually used this move 6 different times. But Angus is so slick with it, he flows between the tonalities like water rolling downhill. Let's take a quick look at the theory behind what I call the major-minor shift, why it sounds so good, and then we'll do a bunch of guitar playing to give you good ideas of how to use it all over the fretboard. The theory behind the major-minor shift is really simple, and it involves 2 notes, the major third and the minor third. Now there are some other notes that we'll talk about that round out the sound of the shift, but the first and most important concept to get your head around is manipulating the major and minor third. Take a look at this simple G chord shape down in the 3rd position. We've got the G root at the 5th fret of the D string, B or the major third at the 4th fret of the G string, D or the 5th at the 3rd fret of the B string, and another G at the 3rd fret of the high E. So we've got a G major triad made up of the root, the major third, and the 5th, and then the octave. To turn it into a G minor triad, all we have to do is flatten the 3rd 1 fret. Now it's a B flat note, or the minor third of G. And the minor third interval is so powerful, it defines the sound or the mood of the triad as major and happy, or minor and sad. And we can also do that instant mood shift when we solo by alternating between the major and minor third in the licks we play. That's the skill you're going to be well on your way to mastering after you watch this video. To more fully understand what Angus Young was up to in the example I played, let's take a quick look at the major and minor pentatonic scales, specifically G major and G minor. If we go up to the 15th position, we have the familiar shape of G minor pentatonic pattern 1. G minor pentatonic has the notes G, B flat, C, D, and F, or the intervals the root, the minor third, the 4th, the 5th, and the flat 7. Remember that minor third and the flat 7 because they're super important. Now, if we take that exact same pattern and drop it down to the 12th position, it becomes G major pentatonic with the notes G, A, B, D, and E, or the intervals the root, the 2nd, the major third, the 4th, and the 6th. And the really important notes here are the major third and the 6th. Also, that drop the minor pattern down 3 frets and it becomes major. It's a trick that is critical to being able to play these kinds of licks all over the neck because it works with all of the pentatonic boxes. So if you didn't know that before, now you've got a great new tool in your toolkit. This is really all the theory you need to understand and make these licks sound great. So let's do some playing, starting with a quick breakdown of those Angus Young licks. Over a 1-4-5 type chord progression in G, which gives us the chords G, C, and D, Angus starts out in G minor pentatonic pattern 1 to play the first phrase. We're down in the 3rd position, and it sounds like this. He starts out bending a C note up to D, then he plays G, D, and F. And that F is important because it's the flat 7 of G, and it implies playing over a dominant 7 chord, even though we're hearing power chords. This is very common in blues and bluesy rock. The next part of the phrase, he does a pre-bend and release from D back down to C. And here's our first major minor shift. The next note is a B flat bent up towards B, or the minor 3rd bent toward the major 3rd. He then plays G and D. The next phrase sounds like this. It starts off straight minor pentatonic with the notes G, F, D, C, B flat, and G. But then he does 2 major shifts by bending that major 3rd up towards B flat. Next, we've got a couple of double stops. The first one with the notes D and F. The second with the notes E and G. Well, D and F sounds minor. That E and G sounds very major. So there's another shift. In the last phrase, he starts off staying major by playing E and G again, bending A up to B, or the major 3rd, C, A bent up to B, release it and play the A note, and then G, followed by a very major sounding E note, and then back to G. Then Angus hints at minor one more time by bending B flat up to C and releasing that bend and playing a B flat that he bends up just a microtone. Not enough to sound major. Then he goes fully major again, ending the solo with G, E, and G. That whole solo is basically a textbook on how to take the sound of the blues, which is mixing the major and minor 3rd over major or dominant 7 chords and using it in a hard rock setting. The last licks in that example are played in an area of the neck commonly referred to as the BB box, after B.B. King, who was a master at using major sounding notes in his blues licks. Let's go to the G at the 8th fret of the B string. That's sort of home base for the BB box when we're in the key of G, and we're going to play F, G, B flat, C, and D. Then descend back to the F and slide into the G at fret 12. That's very bluesy, and if I add some trills and hammer-ons and pull-offs, it's a lick I've heard B.B. King and by extension Eric Clapton play 1,000 times. But I've also heard them turn right around and do this in the same position, play E, or that major 6th, G, A, bend it up to B, that's the major 3rd, C, D, and descend back down. Now it's got a very major tonality. Add in the trills, hammer-ons, and pull-offs, and we get a major lick that we've heard B.B. or Eric play 1,000 times also. Or John Mayer, or Joe Bonamassa, or Slash, or Angus. Pick your favorite bluesy rock player, and they all use these licks. That's why the BB box is a thing. It's so easy to just hang out there and come up with licks that blur the line between major and minor, like this. Classic stuff. Now that you've got the concept, let's look at a few different ways of playing the major-minor shift and coming up with licks. Let's start with adding the major 3rd to minor pentatonic patterns. Let's go up to the G minor pentatonic pattern 1 at the 15th position. And as we've said, we've got the notes G, B flat, which is the minor third, C, D, and F. We can blend major and minor by adding in the major third or B, and we get this pattern and sound. Now you can hear the potential there, but it really comes alive when we bend into the major third instead of playing it straight. You get that greasy, slightly sinister sound that's chock full of attitude. Another way of playing it that I think sounds great is to play the minor third first and then either slide or hammer onto the major third. Really cool. Call it what you want to call it. To me, it sounds greasy and slinky. Another way of playing the major-minor shift in one position is to just play the major blues scale. The major blues scale is a 6-note scale where we add the B flat or the minor third to major pentatonic. So it's a ready-made solution that sounds like this. So we've got the minor third in each octave now, along with really major sounding notes like that A, the B, and E, which are the second, major third, and sixth. I'm going to play over some chords that will bring to mind a famous Guns N' Roses song, and I'm just going to stay in the 12th position and play that one pattern of the G major blues scale. Listen for those major and minor thirds. Staying in the major blues scale reminds me of Southern rock. I always think of the Allman Brothers and Dickie Betts when I hear this sound. It's got the minor third, but hearing that second and the sixth, it keeps it sounding major to my ears. Compare that to adding the major third to minor pentatonic. Yes, we hear the major shift, but the flat 7 of minor pentatonic makes it sound much bluesier. So a killer way to execute the shift and get some different sounds is to use our 3-fret rule and shift between major and minor pentatonic or blues scales. Let's explore that. Over a 1-4-5 progression, or even the Guns N' Roses type backing that we just used with a 1, 4, and flat 7 major chord, I like to start out with a major tonality over the 1 chord. Now when we switch to the 4 chord, we're going to slide up 3 frets. Now we're in a position to play minor. And it sounds great to stick with minor ideas over the 5 chord or that flat 7 major from the Guns tune. And then make a real statement by going back to major when we return to the 1 chord. Let's put some licks like that together over the backing track. One last way to move between major and minor that's really effective, but it's a little more difficult because you really have to know all your positions, is to play diagonal pentatonic patterns, moving up the neck until you get into position to switch tonalities. If you start with major, play until you get into position to switch to minor, and vice versa. For instance, let's start a diagonal major pattern at the 10th fret of the low E, and we're going to play up until we get to the 15th position, which of course is the home of G minor pentatonic pattern 1. And we can switch to minor by playing the F at the 18th fret of the B string. And if we slide into G at fret 20, now we're in G minor pentatonic pattern 2. And there's some really nice bluesy bends we can do there. And then I'm going to work my way back down the fretboard with some minor sequences on the E and B strings. Sliding down to pattern 1 of minor, and then sliding back into the 12th position in our G major blues scale to finish over the G chord again. Or we can reverse the order and play a G minor diagonal pattern starting at the C at the 8th fret of the low E and shift to the major blues scale when we slide into D at the 15th fret of the B string. So I'd play a major lick over the 4 chord, and when the track moves to that flat 7 major and back to the 1 chord, I'd probably shift positions back to 15th position and play minor. Right up to the last note where I would bend that B flat or minor third up to the major third or B to shift tonalities again. Let's try that over our backing track. That should give you plenty of ways to practice shifting between major and minor. Guitar heroes from B.B. King to Eric Clapton to Brad Paisley to Joe Bonamassa to Slash to Angus Young. These players all use the shift constantly to keep their licks sounding fresh and keep the listeners on their toes. It's an amazing sound that works great in genres from country to jazz to blues to hard rock. And it's a skill you need to learn to maximize your potential in any one of those genres. Learning this skill really will change your playing forever, and once you get it down, you'll wonder how you lived without it. Thanks for watching. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. I'll be back next week with another video. Until then, work hard, have lots of fun playing that guitar. Bye.